Hello everybody and welcome to the Filmmakers Guide to the Galaxy episode 9. We are here, me and James, with Sir Matthew Libatique ASC. Hello.
I like the sir part. I always wondered what it would be like to get sir.
Well, it's an English custom, you know. We try and give that to the Americans.
I don't like it on set, but I do in this form. It sounds really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for giving us your time. It's much appreciated.
I appreciate the interest. Thank you.
Everyone who's watching, we have comments on the side or beneath, wherever it is. So please do ask any random questions you have for Maddie. We're going to start off on pretty much where you started out, Maddie. James, if you want to crack on with the first few.
Basically, what was the training that you was doing that got you into being a DOP, or what was it that interested you?
You know, in undergraduate school, I was sort of, I just in general, like in my youth, education wasn't, I wasn't a gunner. You know, I sort of did the bare minimum to sort of get by. I didn't really have to, study. And when I was in undergraduate school, I was originally a psychology major.
Oh, okay.
But I ran into a group of people like you do in school, and they were interested in film, so they started this film club. I started getting interested in cinema, and then all of a sudden, a film called Do the Right Thing came out, and this is like 1989, 90. And I was just completely blown away. I had never even realized that a person like myself could have the option of making a film, and what it didn't even enter into my mind. So I immediately became obsessed with, learning as much about it as I could. And we didn't have the internet to really. We did, but it wasn't. It was like green letters on a black screen, so it wasn't very sophisticated. But I started to, because of that, the elements of social consciousness and the cinematography just grabbed me, and that was basically I attribute that to being the beginning of my inspiration to actually be a filmmaker. And I pursued that. I used to work at a Tower Records, which is a famous record chain.
Yeah,
I used to.
I remember the movie.
Go to school for you do. Oh,
yeah.
You saw a film, yeah. But it was a great place to work. There was a lot of creative people. Everybody did something else. And I, one day, around the same time that I got interested in filmmaking, somebody came up. We had a magazine stand inside of our store, and somebody brought a magazine, American Cinematographer. I'm like, whoa, what's this? And it was the first time I'd ever seen it. It blew me away. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? He's like, you don't know about American Cinematographer? I wish I stayed in touch with this guy because I'd love to know what he's doing now. Because I want to know the guy. I want to re-meet the guy who introduced me to American Cinematographer.
Yeah, amazing.
So then reading those articles and I wish I could remember who was in the front cover, but it just it just drives you. You guys probably have the same feeling when you read about a film that you really love, or you read about a filmmaker. It motivates you. You want to do better, or you read an article and somebody's doing this, and you want to try to do that. But so that it was just all of a sudden, from being sort of from misspent youth to all of a sudden being motivated was like a transitionary inspiration. And then I tried after undergraduate school to get into NYU, got rejected. I ended up going to work for a film company. I got an internship at a film company that did short films for filmmaking professionals called Chanticleer Films. And I just embedded myself within post-production. I got on camera crews and I just started to learn, and I started basically at the bottom. My first gig was to deliver scripts to people from their office, and I was like, I guess this is the beginning, and then I had to sweep out storage. I had to scrape paint off the floor of a storage. This is my first week delivering scripts and cleaning a garage. And
you got to start somewhere, right?
Well, no, I mean, I always look back on that because it's like I didn't come from the business. I didn't have anybody. I didn't know. But like I said, the possibility seemed like it was there, because it was a time in the early 90s and late 80s. You know, you had Spike, you had Jim Jarmusch, Richard Linklater, Robert Rodriguez, and Allison Anders. You know, you had these people who were making films with lesser means, and it made it feel possible.
Yeah.
So that was extremely cool, and I applied after a year taking off between undergraduate. I went to graduate school at the AFI, and that's where I met Darren Aronofsky.
What age were you then? Around then?
20, I think 20, 21.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for relatively young for the school at the time.
Yeah.
I think people are usually a little older. I mean, we had a broad range. It's funny because we, you know, I had a pretty amazing class of directors that went to school in that discipline, with Darren Aronofsky and Scott Silver, Mark Waters, Todd Field. And we had cinematographers, Antonio Calvache being one who I went to school with, and an amazing gaffer, and actually the lighting cameraman on P.T. Anderson's film. Why am I forgetting it? The last one he did in England. Well, his name's Mike Bauman. I always forget titles. Anyway, we were, you know, we had a tremendous class, but as the younger students, we were always shit on by the older ones.
Yeah,
you know, and it was intimidating because you're at this lauded institute, and you know, it's one of those things where you felt like you weren't worthy every day. You know.
Yeah.
You know, and I was fortunate to have teachers that became mentors, like John Alonzo, and who would bring in an insane. I mean, I feel very fortunate because in my year, John Alonzo would come in, Conrad Hall would come in,
wow,
Owen Roisman,
yeah,
Woody Omans. It was Alan Davio, the great Alan Davio, rest in peace. I look back on those times. I learned so much from them. It was such a motivating. Again, you just motivate. All of a sudden, it's like yet another level of motivation and inspiration because you're dealing with these people. And then I met. I don't exactly. Now I'm trying to remember how exactly it happened. I met Ed Lockman, who has been and always will be an influence, and I'm really happy and proud to call him a friend. But I worked with him. We did commercials together. Oh, I know how it happened. Through that company, Chanticleer, I basically got a gig while I was in school, which I wasn't supposed to do. When you're at AFI, you're not supposed to work. But you
have to do work for free, or like when you're short films and things or whatever, or you can't work.
Well, at AFI, you're not supposed to have a job. You can't. It's all encompassing,
right? Okay.
You know, which is one of the things I love about it. It's like you're really at a conservatory where you're, you know, it's like being an artist in residence. You're studying, and there really isn't any time for work. But I took a week. I took a week off, and they played on a film that Nancy Schreiber shot, and I met a cinematographer now. His name is Richard Rukowski, who was a focus puller. Became friends, and he subsequently hired me the next week. And I kept taking off. It was pissing off all my fellow students. Like, where the fuck is he going? He's supposed to be crewing for me. But I was like, I saw this opportunity to learn more by being on set. So I ended up working on commercials with Ed Lockman, and and I've known him since. Yeah. Really, and it's been a really amazing relationship that I really hold dear.
Oh.
But so that was kind of my upbringing, because when I got out of school, just to finish that thought, I knew that I wasn't going to get a movie. I mean, that was unrealistic. Yeah. So I immediately, started building a reel and trying to do music videos, because music videos had been something that I'd always been interested in pop culture and music. And I had met these guys at the same company where I did that internship, which I eventually got a job that year. I actually met these two guys who had a deal with Pioneer, which was a audio company that did karaoke's, and we'd shoot. We'd take an RAS, and we would shoot 16 millimeter 100-foot rolls and shoot footage for a weekend, and they'd cut together a like 6 or 7 karaoke's out of it based on songs.
That's brilliant.
It was amazing.
So like
somebody's paying for the film.
Yeah. So when you're going from after uni and doing like some music videos and stuff like that, what was your sort of first? I don't want to say like turning point, because I think I've learned that there is no exact turning point. But when did you sort of notice that it was the ball was in your court, shall we say?
Well, I spent the most of the '90s, after I got out of AFI, doing music videos, and I was making a really handsome living, to be honest.
That's rare for music videos.
No, I know it is rare, because I was I feel fortunate. I was at an explosion, because when I first started doing them, the budgets were 20,000, which is probably what they are now. But they escalated within a 5-year period to $1 million.
Is that because of MTV and things like that?
$500,000. MTV, and it was what it was? It was an explosion of hip hop and pop.
Right. Yeah.
And they were less inclined as a business to sell themselves on tour. They were selling their records, and it's pre LimeWire. It was what's the other service? So it was pre
Snapster?
piracy.
Was it Snapster or something?
Yeah, yes.
Something like that?
Napster.
Napster.
It was pre-Napster.
Taking me back. Taking me back.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting to look at the history, because it was pre-Napster and it was pre-download. So people were able to, put themselves out there and make money selling records rather than going on tour. So the music video became the ultimate promo. Yeah. As they call them promos. I remember in England doing them there, and they called them promos.
Yeah.
I did a Blur. What's his name? Jarvis Cocker. What's his band's name?
Yeah, Blur, isn't it?
What was Jarvis?
No,
that wasn't Blur.
I'm so bad.
I'll remember.
You forget now.
It was funny. I was like, why are they calling them promos? And then I realized, that's what these things are.
Yeah. We kind of just label commercials and music promos or music videos kind of into the same box, I think, just because people do that. But
I started doing that, and it wasn't until I did. I got a call from my old classmate Darren Aronofsky that we were, he was going to make pot, and so we all stayed in the same apartment in Hell's Kitchen. And we worked for free on deferment, and we made pie. We shot 25 days straight. At least the two of us did. The crew didn't. We would always work on Sunday.
Yeah.
Amazing. That
was 98, was it? 98.
96, 97.
Right, okay, yeah. Yeah.
So that was that like the start then of your relationship with Darren?
No, actually, the funny thing is Darren and I
you went to uni,
sat next to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at the American Film Institute together. We sat next to each other really the first day, and what they do is you're sitting in this the Mark Goodson screening room in there, and you're watching everybody's entry film to get into the school, and everybody's judging each other straight away. And Darren was next, and he had the best film. There's no doubt about it. He literally had the best film. He had made a film called Supermarket Sweep when he was at Harvard, that actually starred the same person that starred in Pie, and we hit it off just culturally, because we were the same age and musically and cultural references.
Yeah.
But he didn't think I had enough experience to work with him, because he wanted more experience. He wanted one of the older cinematographers, oddly.
Yeah.
And that really kind of, it pissed me off. We had, in the first year of AFI, you do 3 cycle films. And Darren, I wasn't in his group the first trimester, let's say. So, but his cinematographer wanted me to operate that film. And he said no, because he didn't think I had enough experience. So I had kept it in my head. The second cycle, he asked me to shoot his film, and I just let him wait for about 7 days before I said yes or no, because I was still pissed off that he wouldn't let me operate for him. And then I realized, like, what am I? What kind of grudge is that? Like, this is literally the best filmmaker at the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I know what it was. Our producer Eric Watson, who was a longtime collaborator with us as well, all the way up until The Fountain. He said, "You're being an idiot." He's like, "You have to do this. Just say yes." And the rest is history. So we made this film called Protozoa, which is now the name of his company.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
So in terms of doing his films, he tends to like to shoot on film. Is that right? Most of the time.
Yeah, he's never shot digital.
Yeah. And Black Swan was
but I wouldn't
16,
say that,
was it? Super 16.
it was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was like? Obviously, you were shooting on film until a certain point, and then you went digital on some other films. But for Black Swan, what was the sort of the logic behind, or the theory behind shooting on 16 for that rather than 35?
It was a couple things. There was a hangover from The Wrestler. He had done that. Darren and I, after The Fountain, had some problems, and we had to, admittedly had to take a break from each other. And it happens in any relationship. And I was making a film with Spike Lee in Europe called Miracle at St. Anna, and he was embarking on the beginning of The Wrestler, and he was very upfront. He said, "I don't think we should do this together because I don't know if we're okay." And because our relationship is so based on all the entire past that we've had that it just wasn't right, I guess. So he did The Wrestler, which was enormously successful, and he did an amazing job, and so did Maurice Alberti, the cinematographer. And he found a rawness that he didn't have since we were in school. Like things started to evolve stylistically for him as a filmmaker, and then by the time he got to The Wrestler, after the Fountain experience, which is like, I had never, I guess I had, but that was the biggest budget at the time for me, and obviously for him it was like $30 million after the power of making Requiem for a Dream for $5 million, so there was an enormous amount of pressure, and going back to The Wrestler, he sort of went back to his roots, and it ended up 16 millimeter. It ended up handheld, and in a Dardenne Brothers kind of style, he made The Wrestler, and he wanted to continue that exploration on Black Swan. So 16 would seem to, and a lot of that is ergonomics. It's getting a handheld camera, a small camera that could fit in the New York locations, but yet have the benefit of like 1,000-foot magazine on a 400-foot magazine. And he's not one for technology. He's not one for techno cranes, and he's not one to like laying track.
Right.
He's one to like shove the operator over a little bit with his hand, to put the camera there.
Poke him in the back, move over.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's fair enough, and it's a beautifully shot film for sure. And I mean, I love film, and I think we were discussing just before this how Steve Yoden is an advocate of digital and how he can shoot digital but make it look like film now. And I think if you know what you're doing, you've got the right tech on your side, you can get pretty damn close. It's just obviously sometimes in those highlights, isn't it? Can't quite.
Yeah.
I think some of the sensors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe some of them can now. I mean, I haven't tested all the cameras out there, but they're all pretty close. But yeah, not as much.
I mean, I do find that it's a question of contrast. I think that if you're emulating film, it's really beneficial to go back, maybe shoot a roll of 35 millimeter, print it if you can find a place to print it, and examine why that is so different than what we've all been seeing on streaming services and in films in general. It's just there's something to it in the contrast and the tonality, and yes, the latitude and the roll off. Yeah. But there's all these things, when you look, your eye is what you have to trust. Like a lens might help with the roll off of highlights, and a sensor contributes to it as well. But you could, and then there's the LUT, and then there's a grain technology like live grain, or something that exists within Resolve as a plugin, that you could emulate. I don't think an algorithm does it specifically, but I do think that. We're going to end up every single. The one beauty of it is we all look at things differently, and we'll all figure out a way to get the look we want.
Yeah, for sure.
We got a little question here that's popped up on YouTube. Matty asked whether he posed a time lapse shot to Darren on Requiem, and what was your take on the new tech at that time?
It's funny calling it new tech. I forgot what video. I was so influenced because I had come from music videos. I just I like to say Requiem for a Dream is a movie that we put a lot of sugar in the coffee. It was inundated with ideas that we had, inspired by things that we saw when we were shooting Pi and things people were doing. in music videos because of and we used the time lapse technology was cumbersome. Using the Milo, which I'm not even sure the Milo still exists. It's a giant rig with computer controlled motors that and we laid on track, and it was cumbersome. But it was an idea that we came up together because we were referencing things that we'd seen. I'm trying to remember the exact reference, but we were just so. You know how it is. You're just so hungry for something new, and whatever you're seeing, you're just consuming, and you're eating it up, and it's spitting it out, right?
Yeah.
And Requiem for us was an opportunity, because it was such a, at the time though, $5 million. I thought I made it. Like at that point, I was like, I think I made it, And somebody's paying me to do this. This is fantastic. This is the most amazing thing, and I'm, but I'm pouring as many ideas into it as possible, and using as much tech and gags. If you want to call them gags, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in the best possible way. But but the one thing he and I learned and argued about previous to that, leading up from AFI all the way up to Requiem for a Dream, was intention. We always argued about intention. Like, why are we using this?
Yeah.
And why are we doing that? Why are we articulating the summer in warmth and the winter in cold? And why are we interpreting the third act in green? Yeah. Which is what that film is. Yeah. And we because we evolved to the same philosophy of technique. That's why I think that film's successful from a filmmaking standpoint. Because of that. But the time lapse, I remember shooting the time lapse shot inside the apartment of Sarah Goldfarb, and it took us the entire shoot day. And Darren's one of those guys who likes to know how many setups he does in a day, and asks the script supervisor in front of me how many, and every single time he does it to this day, it's like a personal affront. Like if it's lower than his usual number, he just seems disappointed, and it's supposed to be my fault. So, I remember that day. I had my response ready because we shot because it's complicated. Yeah, I literally we had the dolly obviously in the camera on time lapse. Did the math and figured out it was one frame every 5 seconds or something for the action. But I had on the main windows of the room, left of frame, I had a guy with, marks that were 6 inches apart, and with a 20K on a doorway dolly. Right. It's like, I know I have this sophisticated piece of tech here, but you need to do the best you can to stay in lockstep.
And don't fall asleep. Yeah.
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 Yeah. But it's incredible.
Great.
So, what did we hear? Oh, go on, Simon.
Yeah, James, your turn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you've done a few documentary dramas, such as Mike Tyson and Pele, and more narrative, like straight out of Compton. What attracts you to doing these type of projects?
Well, Straight Outta Compton's an outlier for me. It was almost like it was a music I grew up with. I used to work at record stores. I worked at record stores since I was 18 years old, and up until I graduated, basically from until I graduated from undergraduate school, where I finally got fired for I forget what it was, tardiness, I think it was, but I think that one was an outlier, and literally the first movie I ever chased when I found out it existed. I wanted to do it. I wanted to find it. But the other films, Pele, again, Pele was one where, I had 3 heroes growing up as a child, before I knew anything. And it was Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, and Pele. Right. They were like the larger than life figures. I guess today, in the 90s, maybe it would have been Michael Jordan. Today it's LeBron James or Lionel Messi. Or Cristiano Ronaldo. But those are my guys. Those 3 were the people I followed because they were on, they had controlled media. They were all over the place. So the opportunity to work in Brazil, which is exciting. One of the benefits of our job is to travel. And also the idea of making a film about Pele would be super cool.
Yeah.
But in Compton as well. Like Compton was just like I wanted to be the guy who photographed the film about that time.
Yeah.
Because I kind of lived that time.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by the music. Like if a Public Enemy movie came out, I'd want to do it. If a Nirvana movie came out, I'd want to do it. You know what I mean?
You're the go-to guy.
They still haven't done a Nirvana film. Like, maybe.
Well, they did one similar. I mean, didn't Gus Van Sant and Harris Saviti shoot a film? I forget the name of it, but it felt like it was Kurt Cobain, the character. I forget the name of it now.
I think it must have something maybe similar or like a docu version of. I don't know.
I think Gus Van Sant should do the Nirvana film if there is one.
For Straight Outta Compton, I remember reading about it in ASC magazine, I think. And what were the lenses that you shot on for that? Because I mean, according to IMDb, it was like Kowas, Cooks. Those are the two anamorphics, and then Zeiss Super Speeds. Was that just for the ages of them growing up?
Primarily, it was Kowas.
Right. Okay.
We didn't. We shot Kawa anamorphics, and we shot. I had Zeiss Super Speeds. I mean, as you know, minimum focus is always an issue with the anamorphic lenses.
And
so I always kept the
pretty bad for that distance minimum focus.
Yes.
Yeah. And also
they might.
On the side, I mean, people go pretty damn funky on the edges in the wider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The wider lenses, the 40 especially, and the 50.
Yeah.
But we maintained that look.
Yeah.
I think I just kept a set of speeds, which I've always loved the super speeds. They're small, they're light,
sure, yeah,
and 1.3. And I just started to make it a habit really there to mix anamorphic and spherical when I needed to get minimum focus in a small location. Okay. I knew I was going to be dealing with interior studios where maybe, and if you look at the film, it was shot in a way that a non-traditional coverage. It was a thing Gary and I talked about, because it would have been an extreme bore to shoot this film if we had owed a shot of every single person at all times. And it really was kind of a goal to see how much of the scene we can get in groups, because it was really, except for specific moments in the film, all their coming up was really about them as a collection. So, and I wasn't interested because there was, to me, there was 5 main characters. To me, it was a superhero movie, and I didn't want to do close up after close up after close up, because if the film existed that way, then I don't think we would have got the atmosphere of where we were. It's one of those films that was shot in Los Angeles for Los Angeles. Yeah. They wanted to, because of budget, wanted to shoot, and they wanted to shoot in Atlanta. And at that time, I just couldn't believe it. Like, how could you possibly even entertain the idea of shooting this movie there, where, it would have been a struggle. It would have really been a struggle to get the essence of the movie. Yeah. But lensing wise, I did. And you don't. I didn't have a. I actually didn't use Cooks. I think it was just the Kowas and the Zeiss Super Speeds. I've
done shooting on anamorphics and then maybe a flashback in spherical or vice versa, or but I haven't done them in the same kind of scene, as it were, or in the same timeline, if you see what I mean. And you don't notice. It's not a major difference, obviously, enough. I suppose you to match the shallow depth, you can go down to 1.3 and stuff. Yeah. That's why I like the speeds, and when I do that, I like to carry a set of lenses that I could actually maximize that fall off. Yeah, and then wide open, they go a little funky as well on the edges. Yeah, they're a little dirty. Yeah, they're a little older. Yeah. So it's not like having a set of a newer set of lenses. Are they the Mark? Definitely, and Mark IIs or 3s or the originals? They were the Mark IIIs. Oh, okay. Yeah. Or the latest version. My focus puller is dead set. He just hates the older versions of those lenses, and he refuses. He's like, "You're putting me at a disadvantage." Yeah. So you worked on a lot of character-centric dramas like Black Swan, A Star Is Born, and then you've dabbled with, shall we say, Hollywood tentpole films like Marvel's Iron Man, DC's Venom. is there a certain type and style of film that you like to work on, or is it just whatever tickles your fancy? A bit like the Pele documentary. Is it just whatever you're passionate about, and you can connect with when you read the script?
Yeah, no, it's a product of the time, really.
Right.
For example, after I had done I had done Mother, then A Star Is Born, and those are two really amazing experiences I had, both for different reasons, and I felt really good. I was after A Star Is Born, I went to New York, and I was doing the DI for Mother, and I got a call to do Venom, and it had been a long time. It wasn't since Cowboys and Aliens that I did something kind of ridiculously big, and I felt I was starving for it, and when I met the director, Ruben Fleischer, on the phone, he referenced John Carpenter, and he just basically said the right thing. And
if you say that name, you got us.
Yeah, done.
Yeah, it's on. It's like your motive. Like it's that feeling of inspiration. Like I get it. I get it. Like you figured something out, and there's no better feeling. So I was really excited about it. And to be frank, I mean, Tom Hardy's one of my favorite actors, and just the chance to work with Tom, there's no chance I was going to not take that film. I wish there was some different things looking back on it about the movie in terms of the screenplay, but I really, I just, to watch him every day do his thing, and then to be involved with a character that's so beloved by the fans, it was a great pleasure. I mean, it was sort of like the Iron Man experience. But that was a completely different scenario where I had not done a film of that magnitude.
Scale.
Yeah.
I mean,
but to go to that original core of your question, I think that character is everything. I think Tony Stark is a character that is as impactful to me, or as important from my perspective in terms of telling a story, as Nina was in Black Swan. Or Sarah Goldfarb in Requiem for a Dream. Like, you got to key on to something, or else everything becomes frivolous. Like, I think, and what Tom Hardy did as well. Like, he was doing some really crazy, physical and mental work in terms of duality, and that I just appreciated. And you focus in on those things because with those movies, the characters are going to be really strong. It's the narrative that you're worried about, especially when you get into the third act.
Yeah.
We've got another question here that's popped up. Where has it gone? What's been the most complicated, challenging scene you've ever done?
I think maybe in Noah we had the deluge where humanity is trying to get onto the ark. Mm-hmm. In preparation for that film, it was, we explored all sorts of options about how to maybe do the Memoirs of the Geisha thing, where you cover the entire location with rags to control the light because it's a day scene. And then the problem of where do we put the rain towers and how low will they be became, And finally we rested on the idea of doing night for day. Right, with, I had 16 to 18 balloons. Wow. In the air for that.
What wattage were they at?
I mean, they were, I think there were 16Ks, there was 8s, and they were all sausage balloons.
8 and 8 in each balloon, or?
Yeah, well, they were all HMI,
okay.
First of all.
Okay.
They were all HMI. And I just needed the most output possible because one of the things I learned from shooting Night Rain, for example, is I started using polarizers. I wanted to use a polarizer. So, my 500 ISO stock I had to light to, 200 or basically.
So how does the polarizer help? Does that help with the rain, does it?
Yeah, well, the reflections on heads and reflections on things that look anachronistic because there's multiple reflections. I mean, the balloons aren't in an expanse like an exterior. The balloons have separation, which means that all the reflections are going to be separate on somebody's head,
right?
Or somebody's face.
Yeah.
So what I use the polarizer for is to try to combine those so there's some realism to it. And and it's a pain in the ass because of the light level, but it just and it's film. I wouldn't need as much of that, but you do. I mean, look, like what we do is we're imitating life, we're imitating physics. So when you're dealing with a situation like that, where there's a deluge, but there's enough light level for us to see the scene, what we have to do is get distance and quality in a way. So the lights not they have to be separated based on the expanse and the ask of what we're trying to do. So I had to deal with multiple reflections, which is why I wanted to have enough out there to be able to do a pull-up.
And then it was just that multiple amount of balloons that was having to fake day, night for day.
Yeah, and being very careful shot to shot.
Yeah.
Being careful shot to shot that I didn't. One thing I always, I don't want to take the audience out.
Yeah.
Like if there's something that's remarkably beautiful from a cinematographer standpoint, shot wise, that has to. It really, I don't think it's just the shot. I don't think it's just the lighting. I don't think it's just the position. It's everything you earned previous to that makes that moment beautiful, and everything. And then you have to remain consistent for the rest of the film. So, it's really. I didn't want anybody to be taken out of the movie with all of a sudden seeing where the light's coming from, understanding that there's an artifice to it. It's something that I do with everything. But in that case, it was really hard to monitor. Luckily, Darren is largely a single camera director. I didn't have 6 cameras out there.
Yeah.
And he focuses on the character. He focuses on, a lot of that scene is Russell Crowe. It's wide shots and Russell Crowe running through, 100 yards of terrain, uneven terrain with 300-foot rain towers pouring down on him with the heaviest drops you could imagine.
Yeah. Just regarding we touched on the Iron Man earlier and those big films. So Iron Man was your first sort of big blockbuster, as it were, in terms of those types of films. And was it like, how daunting was that for you, having to also set the bar and give it a look for then the rest of the Marvel universe? Because it was the first one, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was the first one. I think at around the same time they had made The Incredible Hulk. I think that Ang Lee did, but I don't think it was a Marvel production, and it was through a studio. So yes, it was Marvel as a studio's first venture out independently. Yes, I mean if I dwelled on the budget number at 120 million, I would probably have a lot more anxiety. But I have to say, going into the offices at that time, Jon Favreau has a very independent spirit.
Yeah.
And at the time, even more so, had an independent spirit. And then there was also, Kevin Feige at the time was the right-hand man of Avi Arad. So we're dealing with the people who are doing something for the first time. There was a spirit there that it almost felt like we were making an independent film.
Okay.
Because there was no studio attached to it. So there was a benefit to that. So
I guess you didn't have the pressure of all the other films and how big they were, because you were the first, I guess. Yeah.
Well, if I was the person to go into Thor, like the first Thor, or if I was the person to go into Black Panther, like Rachel, like that would have been different. But it's harder, I think, now for somebody like myself, or Simon. You could certainly be the next guy to do the next Marvel movie, and then you're going to be, and you can call me. You can call me. But you can call me. Like you call me because there's ways to deal with it. Here's the one thing I learned from being on a big movie is that nobody listens.
Okay.
Nobody listens. There's so many people. There's it's exponentially bigger in terms of the amount of people you have to communicate to, and what you realize. And your frustration, anxiety, I realized that one day I was like, I know why I'm upset. I know why I'm anxious, because nobody heard the man speak at the meeting, because they were all doing stuff on their iPads or computers, because everybody has their own idea how everything has to go down, whether it's visual effects, where it's the prop guy, whether it's, all these things happen. Like the man's sitting there speaking, and Jon Favreau is he's a gregarious man who's describing things, and I'm sitting and listening to him, and I'm looking around, and people are looking at their tablets or whatever, and I realized one day, it was an epiphany. It's like, nobody's fucking listening to the guy. That's why everything's fucked up when we show up on the set.
Yeah.
And then I realized that then you basically have to do twice the work to communicate to everybody individually from a cinematographer's perspective, so that you don't get tripped up and get caught in that melee, you know. But that was a film that I had the hardest, I have to say I had the hardest time trying to figure out what my intention was.
Right.
You know,
in terms of what
was the language of it?
What kind of, as in what kind of tone to set and what direction you mean in terms of like contrast and ratios and
what is the look of it?
Sure.
So I just got away. That's the film that taught me to get away from cinematography as a way to create like this distinct look, you know.
Okay, yeah.
And I just went for the narrative. For example, the film begins where he's in captivity, and then that's kind of in my wheelhouse. Like I had disparate color temperatures, and there was darkness in between the light.
Yeah.
But then when we got into his house, the language more there was like, my gaffer and I had this discussion, and we kept having discussions like, look, we have to work with art department because there's nothing in this place that could look like anybody else can afford it. It was that was the goal. It's like, we have to like this, like nobody else can afford to light their house.
Right.
Period. That's what it has to look like.
So did you go with a lot of built-in lighting and then augment on top of that, or did you sort of just use what you added in?
We did a lot of practical lighting and worked with the production designer, and it was sort of the dawn of light gear. It was the dawn of light gear. Al DeMeo, Mike Bauman, the gaffer, and Al DeMeo and I, we started in music videos together. Actually, Mike Bauman was a friend from AFI as well. So he was my gaffer. And then DeMeo used to be, and Scott Barnes, the programmer, we came up together in music videos doing like $20,000 music videos. And so Lightyear was I wouldn't say it was born out of that film, but we definitely started to employ it architecturally within, especially Tony Stark's set, because we couldn't find things that didn't look like I've seen them before. So everything had to be kind of invented.
Well, it worked that nice.
Yeah,
it seemed to work out.
So you obviously then went on and done some films for DC as well. How did that compare to the Marvel films? Did you find they're more stylized and dark sort of vibe?
They have got that
fun to work
moodiness,
with?
more moodiness.
Yeah.
They have going with them, haven't they?
Absolutely, no, they absolutely do.
Yeah.
I think that if I had made a later MCU film, I would have a better contrast.
Sure.
To my DC experience. My only DC experience actually was Birds of Prey recently. Venom is actually a Marvel character, but licensed through Sony.
On loan. Yeah.
So, but I mean, DC definitely, they don't have a visual mandate for what their movies are. So there's and for better or for worse, their universe doesn't exist like Marvel's exists. I mean, let's just say what it is.
They're all individual stories kind of thing.
They're all individual stories. And in some cases, I think that's cool. And in some cases, I think that it would be cool if they connected, But you do have a little freedom there. Like, but again, I had freedom on Iron Man 1 and 2. I think it's important for a cinematographer to understand also the filmmaker they're working with. Yeah. I'm working with Jon Favreau. I'm not working for Christopher Nolan. Yeah. I'm working for Jon Favreau. And that's one of the things when I did Iron Man, I realized, like, I'm working for Jon Favreau. I'm not going to, square peg round hole this situation. Like, I have to understand who I'm working with. Yeah. And it's probably the most important thing I've ever said to any youthful cinematographer is like, just understand your director the best you can. You're going to do the best job you can. Yeah. And in DC, I had a very ambitious director, Kathy Yan, and she extremely artistic. Her first film, Dead Pigs, is poetic and beautifully constructed and woven with multiple characters, which is probably why she was able to get this film, because it was similar. But there was a audacity to her and production designer KK Barrett, and I was able to flex a little bit cinematography wise, because the palette that we decided on was kind of interesting and feminine and something I hadn't done before, and they were embracing something I've always wanted to try to do. I don't think that the film, like the end look of the film, succeeded at 100% what I was actually trying to get. Which I guess you could say for everything. Everything is like, it never turns out exactly
head, and then is it quite?
Yeah. It gets watered down. And then Jon Favreau used to say this great. He was always to say this, like, learn to love it, like just to move on.
Yeah,
I've learned that from a couple directors.
That's good.
Learn to love it. And then Matthew Kasovitz, I worked with him on Gothica. Matthew Kasovitz used to say, just put your pens down, stop writing, stop taking pictures, and close your computer. We're going out, because it's like, we're done. If you're not ready now, then you're not going to get ready over the next 2 days. We're shooting. So, and it's one of those things. But Birds of Prey, it was because of the DC thing and not having to adhere to a universe. It was extremely fun to explore something and go for something different.
I saw a post on Instagram by, I think it was just a lighting company, I can't remember, but and it was the explosion at the end of that film, and you used like 20 sky panel 360s on rooftops, and then a huge chroma key, like it was a massive rig of LEDs, like the biggest thing I've ever seen. What was
it? Looked like a giant computer chip.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all LED. I mean, there was basically, I think, 4 to 6 360s on that rig. It was held by a 8-ton crane, and it was on truss. But it had color forces, which were these amazing lights that are originally designed as washes for backgrounds.
Yeah.
But and concerts. But these lights, we employed them because they have the ability. They're all singular circuited LED units, so we could run chases on them, and their color could be matched, to the sky panels to some degree, and we were able to stay within our palette, and also the intensity of these lights gave us the feeling of interactivity for the explosions.
Yeah.
So, but the rig was, that's one of the funnest things, is really coming up with an idea and having to figure out the interactivity of it.
Yeah. How do I make that rig colourful fireworks and practically,
Yes.
Because, I mean, I see it sometimes and they don't even bother doing the lighting properly, and you're like, they edit in post and then the light is all white and then you're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
You could have communicate, with the post guys a bit, and tell them you're going to do this or whatever. And I don't know. I think some people don't think like that.
That's extremely important, actually, is working with VFX and them being there, like the head man being there, and then talking to you about the light and understand. Like if they have a problem with it, they can come up to you and say, it would be good if we had this. Or that maybe, in my experience, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some great VFX people that they'll sit there and go, what if you did this too? I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. And, working with a programmer and having lights that work and are programmed properly and wired properly, and being able to have that expanse of option is, it's just a real great tool to be able to work quickly in almost a run and gun way, but you also have the benefits of being on a big movie and having these things. So, what I love about Mike Bauman is he always puts a little more on the rig than you need.
Yeah.
So that if the idea,
it's better to have more than less. Yeah.
Better to what's another friend of my Keith Grip in New York? Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Yeah. Plus,
so with all these big heavy CGI films use a lot of previs for the action scenes. How do you find working with them? Are they a bit of a hindrance, or do they work out better in the case of the special effects?
No, especially with Iron Man and things like that. I know they did a lot of previs, and then sometimes I've heard that some directors want to sort of stick to those shots, or you get pushed into the corner.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on those things?
Well, I think again, it's the director actually. On Iron Man 2, I started to use a technology where we previs, and I use a tablet and I would set up shots, and I worked in a volume so that we could give. Previs exists really for sometimes I don't think the director necessarily needs it as much as the producers need it. And why I say that is that it's a tool for them to budget. It's a tool for them to understand how many shots there are and what the kind of shots that are required and what kind of equipment. So it's really a tool to communicate. It's like the old school storyboards would be, or even before that, shot list would be. But it was interesting to do that on Iron Man 2 because we had this Japanese garden sequence, and I had to come up with I just experimented. It was insane to be able to scale myself to a 40-foot crane when I was in a room that was 16 by 16. It was like, okay, can you scale me so that I can get up 40 foot high? If I'm down here, I want to be at 10, or I want to be at like 4 feet here. But then when I boom up, I want to be at. And so he'd scale the camera properly.
Wow.
Right.
And I'm a short guy, so it's like
I guess it's, for those things you don't know until but it enables you to test it for them in production. Yeah.
Right.
Does that take a bit of time to get used to when you're doing that in this volume?
Well, I shot too much. I was able to do 40 setups within an hour because I was moving around and like, okay, what about this?
Don't give the DP the controls.
But you're sketching. It's like sketching. You're just sketching until it looks like something, and then you can eliminate shots, and then eventually somebody's going to put that together with the storyboard people, and that collective group is going to put together the document that's going to be the thing we're meant to follow.
So is that mainly the CGI sections, or is that throughout the whole?
Yes.
Just the CGI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they're mainly CGI.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, but also action sequences, or fight scenes, just to give people an idea. On Birds of Prey we had a tablet so we could see what the set, what are we actually blowing up and where's the light source coming from.
Yeah.
So. Technology. Every time if I do a movie in, next year, that's CG, it's going to have new technology.
Yeah.
And we just keep up with it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. But the nuts and bolts of it are, we know what we expect the explosion to be, and what's kind of nice about cinematography is that we need to articulate it in a physical way, regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of, I know we sort of touched on it earlier, but. Am I right in saying that on the films A Star Is Born, A Birds of Prey, and I think Venom as well, did you use Cook Anamorphics for all of those?
I did. I used Cook's for A Star Is Born. I mixed those with... I know
you did the Koas on the stage stuff.
I mixed up with the Kowas. And then I also used the Cooks on Venom, and I mixed those with Tadeo's. Anamorphics, and I think on Native Son, actually, a film I did for HBO, I used the Cooks and the Tadeos again. And then one of the reasons is I work with a camera house called Camtech here in North Hollywood, and I have a relationship with Kayvon that dates back to when I began in music videos, and I've always loved. Getting gear out of there because he and I, again, we came up together and we have similar, we just have a similar passion for trying to figure out, especially with digital technology, what can we do lens-wise to help the look of the film? Let's not take let's take a set of ultra primes, but what can we do to the ultra primes? So there's a benefit to working at that sort of bespoke level, And one of the reasons the Cooks I like because he had tweaked them for flair, a set that you
special because they've got the special flare ones, haven't they, and then the non-flare. So you're using the ones with flare.
I used the ones with flare, and then Kayvon was one of the people who started to experiment with the coatings there to try to accentuate those, and I use them too because I love the Tadeos. It would be really interesting to shoot a whole movie, but like you were saying about the Kowas, you can't. It's a little belligerent, really, to take a 40 millimeter Kowa and then put it on a face of an actress who's getting paid X amount of money. And, it's sort of like it's damn near irresponsible, really. So you want to have a backup set of lenses that's going to be able to take the high highlight, like the window behind me, or or be able to not have that focus fall off and distortion on the edges of frame. So
with the Todd AOs,
I
were they the main
those.
lenses on Venom then?
I used them a lot on Venom, especially when Eddie was going through his downfall. It was mostly Todd AOs.
Okay.
But then when we went into visual effects, things that were going to be Venom shots, I usually use the cooks to give VFX a little respect.
Yeah, not too much bending, please, to deal with.
Yeah,
exactly. And did you have to stop down a little bit more for the Todd AOs? Because I mean, with the cooks, I've shot on them quite a bit, the anamorphics, and you can use them wide open, which is if you're in a corner, and you can't get lights there or whatever, they are good wide open, and they don't give you too much of an anamorphic look. Yeah.
At times, the one benefit of today's technology is you could evaluate the shot, and if you need to stop down, you could. But I like to start open, on
the Todds,
and and see what I have.
Yeah,
it's like, what can the shot stand it? Like, and if the focus puller is having trouble, or sometimes somebody's walking on a wide lens, they're literally walking out of focus the same distance. They could be 20 feet away, but they're walking left, and all of a sudden they're going soft. Yeah, and I'm like, that's not good.
No,
or you're doing a wide shot, and it's like it just starts to fall off there. Yeah. And then you have somebody's out of focus, top of head. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to switch lenses now.
What do you? That was actually interesting because most anamorphics, they go out, but then the cooks go in. So do you find that's noticeable when swapping between the two in a scene or something, or do you not mind that? Or?
No, I don't mind it. I guess the audience has I really do believe that the audience has a
no clue.
That, or just it goes back to the concept of earning your decisions, technique. You earn them, people buy into them, But like I said, for me, it's just like technically, it's like a responsibility. Like, I don't want somebody to lean out of focus when he's staying the same distance away. Yeah. I just think that anything that I could do to make sure nobody gets taken out of the film is what I'm going to do. Just like you're earning with intent, you're actually you're creating the film, and by virtue of that, you're earning all the technique that you're using. As long as there's a give and take to that. There's a relationship. I'm not going to be belligerent about being at wide open when I'm shooting 4 people, and then I don't know who to focus to.
Yeah.
Who am I supposed to be watching?
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of I just had a thought in terms of when you are, say, you I think you were saying going on the Koas or Cowas and the super speeds, and jumping between the two, for close-ups or wides. How does that affect things in post? Obviously, I find the super speeds are a little bit blue, with flare and stuff. I mean, the Koas are a bit anyway, but I mean, do you sometimes have to tweak? Does your grader have to tweak things like the cooks and the tops?
Yeah, absolutely. If it doesn't work in the cut, absolutely, because basically, we use a LUT, or I use a LUT at least, so that there's a consistency when I get to the DI, so I'm not surprised by why it doesn't look the way I expect it. But what I like the DI for is making all the cuts work. So when you're cutting from one lens to the other, and the flare, obviously those flares are. Something's not matching, then I'll take a little off of that one, or I'll add a little more to that one because it was a cook, or color wise, or maybe you take the highlights and isolate the highlights and do something to those, and then on the next cut maybe pull the highlights down and pull some of the color out because it's a different lens. I'll do that because it's at the service of the cut in the edit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about, and we do the same thing when we're talking about lighting, cutting from shot to shot, and sometimes maybe they use a take that was later in the day. You're matching color temperature and you're matching contrast.
Yeah, we don't like the sun setting during the scene. Match it.
I got a question. What are your thoughts regarding the TV and streaming shows? Are you interested at all in working on any of them in the future, or do you prefer the feature film format?
Well, I'm always going to love the feature film format, but I think it's the future. At least that's how I feel now, given our current situation. Like, I don't see how. I mean, and it's not going away. People are getting used to watching TV shows at home.
Yeah.
You know, and to be fair, there's been amazing work. Like, I've been, there's shows that I watch just because they're like candy to me. You know, Peaky Blinders is one, which is candy to me. You know, I just watched a show called 000, and I just kept watching it because it was candy. I was like, it was like drinking. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. For a cinematographer, I was like, this is great. Yeah. You know, and I've seen some really good stuff. I'll have to say, you know, if it's not good cinematography, I won't watch it.
I'm the same. I have to be honest. I am the same.
Yeah.
I watch something and I'm like, nah. Yeah.
Well, and it's my prerogative. I'm at home. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like we're cinematographers, and I look at something. You know, do I think that maybe the look might have overstated the story? Perhaps, but I mean, by and large, it's like everybody. Like, really good filmmakers are making television now and streaming. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to call it, but it's just the future. And I watched this show called Devs. Yeah. Have you seen Devs? Yeah. I mean, you know, Alex Garland. First of all, Alex Garland and Rob Hardy. It's like they're amazing, you know, and what they do together, and the synchronicity of what they do is incredible. And I watched Devs. Did I love the show? Love is too strong a word, but did I just appreciate the spectacle of it? Yeah. It's phenomenal. Definitely. Phenomenal. And then, like I said, 000 and Peaky Blinders is like, I watched every season. I probably watched it in less time than anybody because I don't need to sleep. I was just like, this show is incredible from season to season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's...
but yeah, I would do it.
We've been interviewing, David Mullen and PJ Dillon, who both work on, those kind of big shows. TV. And their budget, some, like Game of Thrones, they're huge budgets, 10 million an episode or whatever it is. But then obviously when you're on like a $100 million movie, it's kind of the same thing, but you're just told to shoot an hour in a week rather than... That's the problem. Right. I think the time thing is what scares, people who do more feature films maybe. But it depends if you're a fast DP or not, I guess. But it's just, I think that's what scares me. Having to do something in such a short amount of time, yet, on the same kind of level.
Me too. Yeah. I was feeling you do. I mean, somebody once said to me, I forgot who it was, and they were talking about shooting TV and how they don't know if they could do features because they like the pace and then used to the grind of it. And I think that's kind of a bold statement. I think that there's a benefit to thought and being able to evaluate a decision and maybe change your mind. Hey, is it possible? I know this is a live stream, and I apologize, but I want to go to the restroom.
Well, we're almost done. We are. Okay. Yeah, we're almost done. You can pee in your own time. It's fine.
I'll just do it right here.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
We see you suddenly go. Ah.
You'll see a look of relief on my face. Okay, I won't hide it.
No, well, we've reached the hour mark, and
already that was amazing.
I know,
super quick.
Well, we might as well round it up there. Is there any sort of tips you have for the young filmmakers and DPs, especially, that you might give them? I know you mentioned a few things earlier, but is there anything that you think is worth mentioning, especially in this sort of techie age, as it were? Is there anything that springs to mind?
I think don't overwhelm yourself with everything that's out there. Focus on one thing at a time, or else you're never going to get better at it. It's like one of those things where you can learn how to use 5 cameras, but you're never going to get good at one of them. And just because there's so many options out there, and maybe what the thing to do is don't put pressure on yourself to try to learn how to use a mini LF. If you have a Black Magic camera available to you, then learn how to use that and learn how to take pictures with it. Yeah. 1, 2, I think, honestly, from a life perspective, keep your overhead low. This is a tough business. Don't get in too many financial relationships, and just give yourself the freedom to do the cool stuff.
After the first film.
No, don't even buy it. Don't buy a Tesla. Don't buy a Prius. Buy a cheapest car. Buy a Corolla.
Okay.
And just and a used one at that. Literally, do not overextend yourself because you don't want to say no to the cool projects. You want to do the cool projects. And 9 times out of 10, the cool ones don't pay as much.
Right.
And I think it's important to know.
That's a good life lesson for sure.
Have you got time for one quick question that someone's popped up here?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on pushing underexposure, like in the last season of Game of Thrones and Ozark, for example?
In camera, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that exposure is a part of the alchemy of cinematography, and I think you shouldn't be bound by whatever the engineers say. Like if the look is what you intended, then you should go for it, and you don't have to put them within the IREs that the people are telling you to do when you speak to a technical person. Because it's that, where we place the exposure is based on our tastes, our knowledge, what we've learned, and what our intent is. So you should do everything you can to get everything in camera as you can as a cinematographer. Do not leave it up to somebody else.
Just trust your monitor and your light meter or whatever you're using.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Maddie.
Thank you.
Your time has
Guys, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, James. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back next week. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go pee.
Yeah, the guys.
Okay.
He's gone.
He's gone.